You know, I was sitting the other day and thinking we need to get back to our roots at Chisholm Hunter. So let's do an honest review of the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Chronograph. Let's do it. Welcome back to Time on the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison as always. And the other week I got hands-on with the Overseas Chronograph. And maybe it's just a personal thing, but I kind of overlooked the chronograph version for the three-hand, and maybe it was because the three-hand, or the Mount Everest duo time, was my grail watch. And I'm glad that I got hands-on with it because it changed my point of view. When you wear one of these watches on the wrist, they look so much better than they do online. And it's not a bad thing, I'm not bashing the watch at all, I just think that goes across the industry. For example, when you look at a Grand Seiko online, the odds are you can't see the complexity of the dials online. So you need to try it on the wrist. But I'm totally sidetracking here. Let's get into this review. The case diameter comes in at 42.5 millimeters and the case thickness comes in at 13.5 millimeters. Now these specs for my wrists are slightly too big. This is an honest review, so I will give you my honest opinion. I normally tap out at 42 millimeters. This Omega Seamaster is 42 millimeters, but here's the thing. Because it is quite slim for a chronograph, it wears a little bit smaller, and actually as a dressy watch, I quite like it. The reason that I don't go above 42 millimeters is that I have slightly slimmer wrists. They come in at 6.5 inches. But when you look at a watch, you can't just base it off of the case diameter because that doesn't give an accurate representation of how big the watch looks. For an example, if you get a Vacheron Constantin Overseas and you wear it on a metal bracelet, it will look bigger than if you have it on a rubber strap or the alligator strap that it comes with, because the face and the head will look bigger. So it's kind of a perception thing, but it wears quite nicely. I would say that this watch wears like more of a dress watch when on the wrist. And I know that you have the strap alternatives. You have a rubber strap, you have the bracelet, and also you have an alligator strap to choose from. But I would say it wears more dressy. And I think that's in part because it's so thin and it is a chronograph. The bracelet is one of my favorite things about this model. It has that iconic 70s design, that 70s feel, and it tapers in very, very nicely. I would actually choose this bracelet over the AP Royal Oak and the Patek Philippe Nautilus. That is me being genuinely serious. This is an honest review, and on this channel, I want to give my honest opinion to you guys. I think that the quality of this bracelet is just incredible. It obviously has sapphire crystal glass on the front of this watch, which is resistant to scratches and all the rest of it. That is quite standard in the watch industry at the moment, but what isn't standard is the glass on the back. You can see straight into the beautiful movement, that 22 karat gold rotor, which Vacheron movements are unbelievable, but we'll move on to them in a second. The water resistance of this model is 150 meters, and for the purpose of this video, we had the steel variants. The colors on the dials that we were privileged enough to film were black and blue, but I know that there's also a silver dial that is extremely popular. My personal preference here is the black dial. I just think it's that little bit more versatile, and to me, I've said this in other reviews, I tend to go with neutral colors. Look at my Omega for an example, it is the white dial. But what do you prefer?
I'd get blue because if I had a Vacheron, I want to stand out.
That's a good point. To be fair, if you're spending that amount of money on a Vacheron, you do want it to stand out. I suppose it's just personal preference. Before we go ahead, I would love to know what color you would go for. Would you go for the black, would you go for the blue, or would you go for the silver? I have to say, when we were filming the blue, there were some incredible colors that came through. It was almost like electric blue, but I would have to go for the black. Let me know what you think. These models are of course all made out of steel, and I was actually really surprised when I was in the Edinburgh Vacheron boutique, which they just so happened to be Chisholm Hunter's name. I mean, they're literally right beside Chisholm Hunter, which is pretty crazy. So I walked in and I had a feel and picked them up. With just the head of the watch that I had in my hands, it's really heavy. I mean, you can feel the quality, and maybe it's because it's a chronograph, it's going to be slightly heavier, it's a little bit thicker, but to me it just seemed really heavy. But I think that comes down to the craftsmanship and the quality of this watch. I mean, the rotor in the back of it is 22 karat gold. And then you get to the number of components in the movement. We'll move on to the movement in a second. Then you get to the number of jewels and the power reserve of the movement. And obviously it's a chronograph. So I think that the more prestigious the brand, the heavier the face. Carrying on that heavy feeling, backing up my argument that little bit more, the hands and also the indices are coated in white gold. Now gold obviously is heavier than stainless steel. So that's why I feel that the more prestigious the brand and the more precious metals they use, the heavier the watch is. The pushers at the right hand side and the crown are a little bit shorter and a little bit more stubby than other chronographs that I've seen. And I actually really like this. Personally, I don't like pushers being too prominent. And the reason I don't like pushers being too prominent is because when I bend my wrist, they kind of dig into my wrist. So I'm glad that Vacheron have opted for more shorter, stubby, but still functional pushers. In this video, we are actually starting a new tradition at Chisholm Hunter. It's called Wrist Check. And we're going to be checking what watches are on your wrists and also what watch is on my wrist. So what watch are you wearing at the moment? Drop it in the comments and let's have a conversation. Where did you get the watch from? Why did you get the watch? Let's have that conversation. I currently am wearing the Omega Seamaster 300 meters, the mighty Omega Seamaster 300 meters. I love this watch. The Vacheron logo and the Vacheron symbol are both positioned very comfortably at 12 o'clock. I am a big fan of the Vacheron symbol. It's really iconic. And also, I mean, when you think of Vacheron as a brand, it's been around since 1755 and it's the longest watchmaker in continuous production. So when you think of that symbol passing through the generations, it's quite a nice thought. The date window is positioned between the 4 and 5 o'clock mark, and on this chronograph, that design really, really works. I like that it's slightly slanted, and it just kind of feels right within this chronograph. Then you get to the chronograph features. Let's talk a little bit about what they do. It has a small seconds subdial, a 30-minute counter, and a 12-hour counter. By the way, I can't remember if I said before, but this model has 150 meters water resistance, which is pretty good for a chronograph. It also has superluminova over the hands and the indices. The movement is the in-house Vacheron Constantin reference 5200. Its self-winding is 6.6 millimeters in thickness, has 263 parts, 54 joules, and has 52 hours of power. It beats at a frequency of 28,800 VPH. But don't let me talk about it forever, just have a look at it. Vacheron's movements are truly some of the best in the world. They are handcrafted genius, and for a watch enthusiast or a watch buff, they're just mesmerizing to look at. I mean, the gradient used and the cross between the polished gold on that 22 karat oscillator and the texture is simply jaw-dropping. This Vacheron model, or the Vacheron brand as a whole, is of course part of the Holy Trinity, and there's no wonder why. It's stunning. The whole brand is unbelievable, and I think that makes it that little bit more desirable for me, just on a personal level. My personal thoughts about this watch are that it is simply jaw-dropping. I love the movement especially, but what I would love to see from Vacheron is a slightly smaller version. And if they made it in a 41, 41.5, even a 42, it would fit. I don't have the money for it, but I can dream. If you have enjoyed this video, if you like this watch, then make sure you hit this subscribe button for more. I am actually away to Norway in 2 days, and I'm really excited. A photography, videography trip. You guys follow my personal channel, you'll know that I love that kind of stuff. But I will see you after Norway. I'm gonna miss this chair. I'm gonna miss the watches. I'm gonna miss you guys. I'll see you soon.